After entering the wrong bridal chamber, I went to farm with the sinister and powerful official. Chapter 1, Enter the Wrong Bridal Room. Chapter 1, Entering the Wrong Bridal Chamber. The wind sang cold in the window at dusk, and the shadow of the candle sways and sways on the pillow. The clear smell of wine filled the tip of his nose. Yen Funin opened his eyes with great effort and pulled off the red cloth covering his head, and was stunned. It turned out to be a red veil embroidered with the word, Double Joy. Suddenly, a handsome face was caught by the end of my eyes. She was so shocked that she sat up. The young man in front of him looks like an 18 or 19, and he is born with peerless appearance, and his skin and bones are all unique. What's going on? I wanted to get out of bed to check, but I didn't expect that the man would press his skirt under my body, so I had to kneel down and stretch out my hand to pull it. She was afraid of waking up the person, so she pulled her carefully and cautiously. Suddenly, the man moved, and the light and shadow moved with his body, finally caged her in his shadow. Yen Funing clasped her skirt and paused, and looked up at him. Hello, where are we? Fu Si looked at her coldly, sat down to the edge of the bed, lowered his eyes and pressed his forehead. Yen Funing, what are you trying to do? The voice is clear and pleasant, as if the cold springs in the empty valleys are stirring, but it is mixed with ridicule. When Yen Funing's toes fell to the ground, she heard him calling her name and forgot to stand up. Do you know who I am? Fu Si stood up and said coldly, My poor mother is blind, her sister is lame and her brother is crazy, how can she be worthy of marrying her? The atmosphere was stagnant, as if it was frost. Yen Funing's heart burst into pieces, like thunder suddenly arose. Isn't this the plot she saw in the book last night? There is a female canon fodder supporting role in the book named Yen Funing, who has the same name and different surname. The female supporting role has an engagement with the male protagonist Fu Si. In Ling County, the Yen family was the richest merchant, and the Fu family had a county magistrate. Fu Si is the nephew of the county magistrate. However, before getting married, Yen Funing thought Fu Si's family was poor, his mother was blind, his sister was lame, and his brother was stupid. Then, at the entrance of the book club, he withdrew from his relatives in front of the famous student. It made him look disgraced. She walked up to him in a daze. Fu Si. Fu Si suppressed the heat in his body and chuckled briefly. What trick did you change this time? He was drunk at the banquet, probably at that time he was drugged. Someone had chills at the corners of his eyebrows and eyes, and Yen Funing's heart trembled inexplicably, and his heart was even more confused. Then he pointed to the wedding dress on himself and the wedding robe on him. Are we married? Fu Si's eyes turned cold. You should be in my elder brother's room at this moment. Ah! Yen Funing exclaimed, suddenly felt a sharp pain on her forehead. She raised her hand and found that there was a big raised bag on her forehead. With this press, it seems like the memory switch is turned on. Yen Funing's memories poured into her mind, and the memories before she retired from the marriage were just like those written in the book. And then, it was different. Today is the day when the Yen sisters marry the Fu brothers. Miss Yen Haitang married Fu's second son Fu Si, and Miss Yen second, Yen Funing married Fu's eldest son Fu Mingyi. But she was in Fu Si's room now, and they were still lying together just now. Yen Funing was stunned. I changed the wrong bride, why are you not in a hurry? Fu Si kept silent. If he could choose the two daughters of the Yen family, he would not want either. This woman pretended not to know him just now, so she knew that she had changed the wrong bride. Could it be that entering the wrong bridal chamber was her prank? Yen Fu said anxiously, since you have changed the wrong way, you have to change it back quickly. As written in the book, the two had no intersection after retiring from the marriage, until Fu Si won 3 yuan in a row and became a powerful minister. He first cut off the Yen family's financial resources, and then imprisoned all the Yen family men on charges. She went to beg him, but was imprisoned by him and tortured every day. It can be seen that this person is very vengeful. If they become husband and wife, then she will. I have to exchange it for the wedding night, and it will be too late until tomorrow. After saying that, he walked out of the house. Fu Si pulled the collar, the wine dissipated, and the heat in his body became more and more obvious. He sat at the table, clenched his fists, trying his best to restrain his discomfort. Yan Funing felt that someone hadn't followed him, so she turned around and walked to him. "What's wrong with you?" She looked at him with her head tilted, seeing that his face was flushed and his breath was disordered, so she reached out to his forehead and was avoided quietly by him. Yan Funing frowned. This person probably suffered from aphrodisiac drugs. Things are getting weirder. Who gave him medicine? In this case, someone probably can't go with her to change the bride. But if he didn't go, she couldn't explain it clearly. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. What's more, the aphrodisiac on this person must be relieved as soon as possible. Thinking of this, she walked to the screen, took a basin of cold water, and poured it directly into his head and face. On a cold day, when he splashed like this, his hair and face were completely wet, and his wedding robe was much wet. What a crazy thing. Fu Si stood up and brushed the water on his body, looking at her with cold eyes. Yan Funing blinked. "Do you feel more comfortable?" The heat on his body was washed away by cold water, and a trace of his eyes surged into Fu Si's cold eyes. Who gave him medicine? This woman knows how to solve the properties of this medicine. Could it be her? Then she thought that she didn't want to marry him and probably wouldn't use her own innocence as a bet. "Do you want to change it back?" Fu Si stood up. No matter what role she played in today's conspiracy, he would not want to keep her here at this moment. Yan Funing nodded. "Yes, let's change it back." How can the eldest son leave the wedding room? In the book, he imprisoned her in a villa, and that series of crazy revenge emerged in her mind. It is like gently stroking her face with a blade, which is a very light behavior. Since she is wearing it, saving her life is the most important thing. You must correct this mistake as soon as possible. Seeing Fu Si walking out, she hurriedly followed. The night is deep, like covering the sky, and lead clouds gradually float. The red silk in the mansion is hung high and the lights are brightly lit. Because it was late at night, the journey was quiet, and soon, the two of them came to Shiyuan. What surprised Yan Funing was that the east garden was simple and elegant, while the west garden was magnificent, with flowers, ponds and arches, water pavilions and corridors, rockery and pavilions, all of which were exquisite. The only similarity between the two gardens is the red light of the dragon and phoenix candles shining out from the windows of the new house. She was about to approach the door with the big red happy letter, but was stopped by the old mother. "Second young master." The old mother nodded to Fu Si, turned her eyes to see Yan Funing's wedding dress, and called again, "Second young master, what are the two newlyweds coming to the west garden on their wedding night?" Yan Fu said anxiously, "Wrong, the bride made a mistake. I am the second lady of the Yan family and the eldest young lady." Fu Si's eyebrows frowned slightly. In the new house, Fu Mingyi and Yan Haitang woke up when they heard the sound. The heavy wedding tent was lifted and the candlelight shot in. Only then did the two realize that they had slept in the wrong person. Yan Haitang put on his clothes randomly and put on his outer shirt and opened the door. Seeing Fu Si wearing a red wedding robe, her eyes were filled with stunning. She shook her mind for a moment and glared at Yan Funing. The second sister doesn't say it sooner or later. What's the point of saying this now? You kept saying that you didn't want to marry Mr. Fu, and even stepped down in front of everyone. Now, you still kept holding on to Mr. Fu. Fu Si is handsome and is the dreamer of many women. It turns out that Yan Funing, the little hoof, is playing the trick of trying to get. I woke up just after I was in a coma, and I came to exchange it when I woke up. Yan Funing asked back, "On the contrary, it's my elder sister, it's been one night, why didn't I find that I entered the wrong bridal chamber?" End of this chapter. After entering the wrong bridal chamber, I went to farm with the sinister and powerful official. Chapter 2, Just Be Wrong. Chapter 2, If you are wrong, you will be wrong. Yan Haitang choked up, and her mother said she had to cover her veil when drinking the wine, and then she was confused. After thinking for a while, she said, "I drank wine and fell asleep." "Oh, take it seriously." Yan Funing saw her eyes flashing and asked again, "Where is the eldest son?" Fu Mingyi was dressed neatly and left the house. He saw Yan Funing at a glance, with a very charming look. Even if there is a bag on her forehead, it will not affect her thrilling face. His bride should have been her, and Fu Mingyi calmed down for a moment before looking at Fu Si. Why didn't my second brother find out that the bride had made a mistake as soon as possible? Fu Si stroked the sleeves and said, why didn't brother notice? Fu Mingyi, you. Fu Si's eyes were as cold as water, and his voice was indifferent. She covered her veil, I didn't see her face. Fu Mingyi asked again, have you ever drunk Heijio wine? Fu Si, no. Yan Funing, my second son and I didn't drink the same wine. We came here just to save the situation. Yan Haitang stared at Fu Si directly and nodded, it's only midnight now, it's still early before dawn, let's change it. Fu Mingyi pondered for a while, but didn't speak, which was considered a default. At this moment, the old mother took out a yuanpa from the new house. The eldest young master and Miss Yan have already fulfilled their relationship. After saying that, regardless of the expressions of the four masters, he pinched yuanpa and went to the main courtyard of Shiyuan. Yan Funing frowned in surprise. It turned out that Yan Haitang was sleeping when she was sleeping. Among the four people present, two became real couples, and she had a deep conflict with Fu Si earlier. What should I do if I have such a situation? The old mother soon invited the second old master and the second old lady. You have a pair of people who have already completed the house, and you can only make mistakes. The second old master said in a deep voice. Yan Haitang was dissatisfied. What if the second young master who was with me was the second young master and the eldest young master who made the family reunion with me? The old couple in the second house are the parents of the county magistrate and Fu Mingyi's biological grandparents. In front of them, she could not say that she loved Fu Si. The courtyard was quiet for a moment. After a while, the second old lady took Yan Haitang's hand. I was sent to the bridal chamber after the wedding, and the problem could only be when the bride got out of the sedan chair. The implication is that Fu Mingyi is the one who celebrates with Yan Haitang. Yan Haitang said aggrievedly, but the second sister hates the second young master. She quit the man's noble face and retreats arrogance. Can't the bride be replaced in this way? The second old master glanced at Fu Si with his turbid eyes. Originally, Miss Yan Er was a companion to Si, but the current situation shows that they are indeed destined to be. As for whether it is a bad fate, it is not his business. Fu Si is not his grandson. After this, Yan Funing had to go back to Dongyuan with Fu Si. On the way, she murmured to herself, the problem was when she got off the sedan. The Yan family married two daughters on the same day, just like the sedan chair and the wedding dress. When they got out of the sedan chair and entered the door, they refused to give in and fell down after some pushing and shoving. Although Yan Funing was domineering, she was weak. She fell to her forehead and fell to her husband's neck and fell into a coma after she was sent to the bridal chamber. Fu Si frowned slightly. At that time, two women from the Yan family fell and were helped up after they fell. The mother stuffed one of the red silk into his hand. After entering the bridal chamber, she fainted and left when he shook his sleeves. He doesn't like the woman who falls into a coma, so delicate. I never thought she was Yan Funing. Suddenly, Yan Funing recalled, when I entered the door, someone deliberately tripped me. Fu Si, confirm. Yan Fun nodded, it's true, the person who tripped me was wearing plum-embroidered shoes. Fu Si frowned. Today, the wedding girls were wearing plum dresses and embroidered shoes. After about a cup of tea, the two of them returned to the room. Yan Funing was puzzled, why didn't the eldest sister and the eldest son find out that something was wrong? I even got the house back. Fu Si said lightly, wine. Yan Funing quickly checked the Heian wine that she had not drunk, but it turned out to be passive. I think the same is true for the Heiyu wine from Shiyuan. Because she was in a coma, someone could not drink a mermaid with her, and the aphrodisiac on him was probably taken at the banquet. Because she was in a coma, someone might have been drugged so that they could lie together. It seems that the mistake of changing the bride was set up by the Fu family. In order to have at least one pair of couples on the wedding night, they will never be able to change them back. I encountered such a difficult problem as soon as I came across it, and what was even more difficult was how should she get along with someone. Second young master, we have a holiday first. She pulled the corners of her lips at him and smiled as naturally as possible, or. Before she could finish her words, she was interrupted by Fu Si raising her hand. My grandparents made the engagement. Since tonight's conspiracy had nothing to do with her, he suddenly changed his mind. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. Yan Funing's smile froze. Didn't I retire from the marriage? My marriage books were torn. Fu Si said without Bob, my share is still there. His grandparents have raised him, and the girl broke off the engagement before. Now he wants to divorce immediately, but he doesn't meet her wishes. Yan Funing frowned. What do you mean, are we now husband and wife? Fu Si, yes. Yan Fu sighed in a slight voice. In the book, she is just a cannon fodder female supporting role. She is imprisoned and tortured by him. She is an ant he can kill at will. Now, he says they are husband and wife. Who will save her? Fu Si looked at her, walked away, came back soon, and handed her a piece of rice paper. I wrote the book of Heli. Heli Shu. It will be divorced automatically in 2 years. His voice was very quiet. Yan Funing took and read the book. This person wrote traditional Chinese characters. That's right, of course the ancients wrote traditional Chinese characters. As the soul of modern people, she may not recognize the traditional Chinese characters, or she may not know them, or she may not know what they are. But she could probably understand the meaning of traditional Chinese characters written in the article. In the book Heli, it was written clearly that Heli automatically after 2 years. Seeing her frowning and looking at her for a long time, Fu Si said, I almost forgot that you are illiterate. Yan Funing's lips trembled. She was a modern master at least, but she was actually said to be illiterate by an ancient man. Fu Si had a cold and calm face and waited quietly. When she was as aggressive as she was at the door of a book club, she ridiculed him mercilessly, stepped on his pride, and muttered that she was about to divorce her now. What surprised him was. Yan Funing carefully folded the rice paper. The situation has been caused, so let's leave in 2 years. It is rare to agree to a divorce for 2 years based on his performance. If he divorced just after getting married, it would only make him completely disgraceful. Maybe this person's revenge would be more terrifying than in the book. Yan Funing couldn't help but tremble and walked to the dressing table to sit down. Only then did I see myself in the mirror, and my appearance was exactly the same as that of her modern one. When she was still in modern times, her best friend always said that she was born too beautiful and her every frown and smile seemed to be seductive. Now, looking at the bride's appearance, it's really pretty. But the bag on her forehead was abrupt, and she touched her fingertips lightly. Well, it hurts so much. His voice was charming, his tail was long, and he cried in a sad and graceful voice. This voice, this word, is in the wedding room again. Fu Si's calm eyes seemed to have seen something flashing through his calm eyes, but it instantly subsided, with only disgust. End of this chapter. After entering the wrong bridal chamber, I went to farm with the sinister and powerful official. Chapter 3, Conspiracy to set up a situation. Chapter 3, Conspiracy to set up a situation. Soon, he paced out. Without waiting for her to ask, he turned his head slightly and said, I'll sleep in the study. When Yan Funing heard this, she quickly walked to the window frame and saw him heading towards the room on the left, and sighed with relief. Fu Si's ears moved and his face became more and more cold. After closing the doors and windows, Yan Funing took off her wedding clothes and washed up, and then she realized that there was a jade pendant hanging around her neck. The jade pendant has a word, Yan, carved, and the Fuji is carved, and even a water droplet condensed on the lotus leaves is carved exquisitely and roundly. It complements her name. However, the book does not describe this jade pendant. That night, Yan Funing had a dream. It is also the 12th lunar month in my dream, and the frost falls and the ice is thick. The sun is gradually rising, but it is cold and has no warmth at all. She went to ask Fu Si to let Yan's house go, but she didn't want to be locked in a villa by him. The windows in the room were nailed firmly by wooden boards, and a few beams of light penetrated into the gaps between the wooden boards, illuminating the dust in the air. In addition, the whole room was dark and cold. She was shackled, her hands were tied to the back of the chair, and her legs were also tied to the chair legs. Suddenly the door was pushed open, and when she saw the visitor, her eyes suddenly shrank. He brought a dagger. In a panic, she struggled. But I couldn't get rid of the ropes trapped on my body, but my clothes were slightly open, revealing a touch of whiteness in my heart. The man glanced at him and then withdrew his gaze, as if he had a look more, it would have stained his eyes. He pulled out his dagger for a moment in silence, and the blade shone with a cold light. Seeing this, she used her toes and used all her strength, and then she moved the person and the chair for a few inches away. The man smiled, but his eyes looked like ice, and he was sinister and angry. He approached her and slowly stroked her face with the blade. With another minute of force, her face would open a hole. She didn't dare to move at all, and even her breathing was so scared that she stopped. "What you up to?" The voice shivered. The man leaned over to her ear, his voice cold, but like a death-seeking demon. "Guess, do I want to marry you or kill me?" Yan Funing woke up in shock. The scene in the dream, as I saw in the book, was the incident after someone became a powerful minister. She held her heart, judging from yesterday's relationship and the description in the book, she was resentful of resigning from the marriage. Now they have become husband and wife by chance, and the days to come. After a little panic, she fell asleep again. Early the next morning, the maid lifted the curtain of the bed and called out softly, "Miss, wake up, the old man and the old lady are here for Fu's house." "Who is here?" "I didn't sleep well last night," and Yan Funing was sleepy at this moment. "It's the lady's grandfather." Yan Funing opened her eyes only then. The maid in front of her has a round face and a round nose, which is Tsayu, the close mate of the female supporting role. After a closer look, her eyes were red and her eyelids were swollen, and she obviously cried. "Are you crying?" Yan Funing got out of bed and asked again, "Why didn't you see you last night?" Tsayu couldn't help but shed tears. When the lady left the house, the maid was tied to the Yan family. The maid was released this morning. She followed the old lady's maid to the Fu family with the old lady. Hearing this, Yan Funing woke up immediately after she fell asleep. "Who brought you here just now?" Tsayu served her dress and recalled, "An old mother seems to be next to the second old lady of the Fu family." Yan Fu frowned and said, "Is it possible that the Yan family also participated in the bride exchange?" Last night she thought that it was a conspiracy of the Fu family. Hearing what Tsayu said at this moment, she couldn't help but let her want the Yan family to enter. "Switching the bride?" Caillou said in surprise, "So, my son-in-law has become Mr. Fu's second son?" Yan Funing nodded. "What's wrong?" Tsayu rolled up her sleeves. "No, the maid has to beat him up to make him have a memory. He will listen to everything in the future." Yan Funing's lace-up hand was paused, and the female supporting role was arrogant, and even the maid beside her was so brave. At this moment, a man coughed lightly from the door. The master and servant looked at each other and saw that it was Fu Si. Tsayu clenched her fists and rushed over. Yan Funing thought of someone in the dream slashing her face, and she felt so worried that she hurriedly pulled Tsayu's arm. However, Tsayu was so powerful that she dragged her away directly. Seeing that his fist was about to hit Fu Si, Yan Funing had to hug her. "Tsayu, don't be impatient. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading." Fu Si held one hand behind his back, stood silently, and for a moment, he spoke indifferently, "The elders of the two families are already in the front yard." Tsayu then put away her fists and helped Yan Funing make up. The morning light reflects the clouds and the ground is covered with frost. The north wind blows in the cold winter, which is fierce and terrifying. Yan Funing simply used the morning food, put her cloak together, and followed Fu Si to the front yard. Without waiting for them to salute, the second old master said directly, "Si, today, your big house will be moved to the countryside." Fu Si seemed to have expected this day and said it lightly. Yan Funing was puzzled, "Why?" The second old man picked up a few tea cups and whispered softly, Wan Yang is not my brother and sister-in-law's biological daughter, and the 3 children she gave birth to are naturally not from the blood of the Fu family. Yan Funing was shocked. The book said that the Fu family was divided into 2 houses, with the big house living in the east garden and the second house living in the west garden. The old couple in the big house have a daughter named Fu Wanyang. After Fu Wanyang gave birth to Fu Si, she also gave birth to a pair of siblings. Although the book does not mention Fu Wanyang's husband, it is written that because of her love for her daughter, the old couple in the big house treated her 3 grandchildren as their parents. The book does not describe Wanyang and her son as the 4 are not from the Fu family's bloodline. The second old man's eyes flashed, and he slowly drank a sip of tea. See, your grandparents left a will to leave the property of the east garden to our west garden. Now that you are married, it's time to move out of the mansion. Yan Funing, where is the will? The second old man put the teacup heavily and snorted coldly. How could he show her the will? Old Master Yan looked up and scolded, Funing, how did you talk to your elders? Yan Funing's eyes turned lightly and her eyebrows moved slightly. At this moment, Yan Haitang snuggled in the arms of Mrs. Yan, looking obedient, and obviously accepted the fact that she became Fu Mingyi's wife. The 2 elders of the Yan family had a calm face, which made her more sure of her guess. After I retired from the bride, my grandfather and grandmother said that the Yan family Fu family still wanted to get married. My eldest sister said that she admired the second son, so she would marry her. My grandfather and grandmother asked me to marry the eldest son. Poor Yan Funing thought that Fu Mingyi was the son of the county magistrate and a good match, so he agreed on the spot. Now that they want to come, they just want to trick her into the sedan chair. He deliberately tripped her up and put medicine on alcohol. When she was unconscious, no one asked for a doctor. The Yan family's maid did not come with her. Every matter was for the same purpose. Yan Funing smiled slightly. It turns out that the wrong bride was a conspiracy between the elders of the 2 families. Although the tone is soft, it is clear and refreshing, with a little indifference to see through. The elders didn't expect her to see through it. The second old lady sneered a few times and snorted, Mingyi's father is the county magistrate. How could you, the adopted daughter of the Yan family, match my relatives and grandson? Yan Fu's eyebrows frowned. She was not a daughter of the Yan family and she didn't write it in the book. At this time, old Mrs. Yan stood up and said, Funing, you are indeed not a child of our Yan family. End of this chapter. After entering the wrong bridal chamber, I went to farm with the sinister and powerful official. Chapter 4, being driven out of the mansion. Chapter 4, evicted from the mansion. She took out an old red note. When you were sent to the Yan family, you had a jade pendant and a red note. Yan Funing took the red paper and unfolded it, and wrote her birthday on it, which was the same as in the book. Uncle and aunt have not had children for a long time. If they want to have their own children, they have to adopt a baby girl who is related to brothers and sisters. Yan Haitang sneered, you are the one who was chosen because your horoscope is in harmony. Yan Funing suddenly realized that the elders of the 2 families wanted to match Fu Mingyi and Yan Haitang, but Yan Haitang had only Fu Si in his heart, so he used this method of moving flowers and connecting trees. The Fu family wanted to drive Fu Si to the countryside again, so the Yan family naturally would not ask their granddaughter to suffer. And she is the cannon fodder. Fu Si turned his gaze to her, as coquettish as her, and was so calm at this moment. Yan Haitang had a sarcastic feeling on the corner of his mouth, otherwise, the Yan family will be flirtatious, why? Yan Funing looked at Yan Haitang indifferently, I love one in my heart, but another beside me. How about my mood? You. Yan Haitang glared. The elders of the 2 families looked at each other. I finally convinced Haitang to be Mingyi's wife this morning, but the little girl said this right now. Old Master Yan immediately took a photo of the armrest of the Grand Master's chair. Haitang and Mingyi are the best matches. The second old man half closed his eyes and spoke slowly, Mingyi is cared for by his father, and his future will be bright, and Haitang will become an official wife. Yan Haitang's face moved. She seemed to see herself becoming the official wife of the capital, with an imperial decree in her body and a glorious scenery. This is something that Yan Funing, who is so beautiful, cannot reach. Then I'll say congratulations first. Yen Fu's lips raised the corners, as if the Fu was just blooming. A pair of clear autumn water eyes hidden in bright light, as if the identity of an adopted daughter did not cause her to fall down, but instead added a bit of fresh and refined beauty to her. I am the eldest daughter of the Yen family and the serious daughter-in-law of the Fu family. How do you compare with me? Yen Haitang was quite lustful. Yen Funing, no, you are not worthy of being surnamed Yen. In the future, you will not be allowed to return to the Yen family. Yen Fu narrowed her hair collar and shrank her chin into the hair collar. Don't worry, I won't go back. The magnificent glow hit her body, the bright red cloak and white fur collar made her look brilliant, and her jade-like skin shines. Especially her face is the most eye-catching. Yen Haitang hated this face the most and immediately shouted, "Why don't you get out of the Fu family?" Sayu said to Yen Funing, "Miss, go pack your luggage." Slow down. Yen Haitang stopped him arrogantly, the Yen family's dowry and the clothes and jewelry that the Yen family paid for. Sayu's contract is in the Yen family, and she cannot leave. Yen Fu disassembled the cloak on her body and threw it on the ground. As the wind blew, the slender fingers turned red, and the skirt was close to the waist, outlining a delicate and soft figure. "Miss!" Sayu cried. How could her lady have suffered such grievances? Yen Funing looked at Sayu deeply. Whether in the book or in the memory, this maid was always loyal. Unfortunately, I was penniless and couldn't take her away. Sayu knelt to the old lady Yen crying and begged, "Old lady, for the sake of the second lady calling your grandmother for so many years, please help the second lady." Old Mrs. Yen frowned. Fu Ning was beautiful, she was happy. I brought Sayu here today, and I originally wanted Sayu to continue to follow Fu Ning. But Haitang is her granddaughter, and compared her two sides, she turned her heart to her biological child. Thinking that after adopting Fu Ning, the second son and daughter-in-law already had their own children, old Mrs. Yen finally spoke out, "Just bring a few clothes to go." At the corridor, the brothers of the Dragon and Phoenix twins, Fu Nanyao and Fu Beima came. Because Fu Nanyao walked slowly because of his lame legs, he said loudly, "Brother, I'm still waiting for my sister-in-law to go to serve tea." As soon as she said that, she realized that something was wrong. Fu Si said, "Tell me, pack up and let's live in the countryside from now on." Yen Funing was unsure. She was not a lady of the Yen family. Although Fu Si was kicked out of the Fu family, she could still go to the countryside. If he took the opportunity to take revenge and did not agree with her going. Seeing her standing still, Fu Si turned his head and said, "Don't you leave." Yen Fu said in a narrow voice, "Leave, leave." "Okay, my sister-in-law and we live in the countryside." Fu Beima quickly walked to Fu Si, turned to Yen Funing and said with a smile, "Sister-in-law, I tell you that you can dig earthworms in the countryside." Yen Haitang sneered, "Fool." Fu Beima stared at Yen Haitang with wide eyes, "I'm not a fool." Yen Haitang snorted and laughed, "You are a fool." Yen Funing, who are you calling a fool? The boy was born innocent and innocent. Just because he calls her sister-in-law, she has to help. The female supporting role is an arrogant and domineering person, and it's not that she can't learn it. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. Yen Haitang, I just scolded him. Isn't he just a fool? Yen Funing, who is the fool scolding? Yen Haitang pointed suspiciously at himself and asked in disbelief, "You said I am a fool?" Yen Funing asked back, "Since you admit it, why are you asking?" Fu Si's indifferent face moved slightly, and then he walked with his eyebrows. He had seen a woman with sharp teeth and a sharp mouth, and knew that she had a good way of beating people. It was just that she helped Beima, which surprised him. Yen Haitang was furious and wanted to grab Yen Funing's face. Yen Fun squatted skillfully, picked up the cloak from the ground and threw it towards Yen Haitang's head and face. I don't know what trick she used, but Yen Haitang felt the scorching pain on her face and the buzzing sound in her ears, as if she was slapped in the face. "Grandmother." Yen Haitang stamped her feet and leaned onto the old lady Yen pitifully. Grandmother punished her. Yen Funing ignored Yen Haitang and walked a few steps quickly, and her skirt raised a shimmering curve, and soon followed Fu Xi's steps. A little bit. Fu Beima made a face over Yan Haitang, then trotted to the corridor, and helped Fu Nanyao away. The second old master sent someone to stare at Wan Yang and her son to organize things, for fear that they would steal the valuable things. Seeing that they had only brought a few clothes and bedding, they immediately said that they could ask the driver to drive them to the countryside. On the carriage, Wan Yang held Yan Funing's hand and said gently, "Don't feel uncomfortable with your child, you will definitely find your biological parents. You are Xiaoyi's wife now, and I will treat you as your biological daughter." Yan Funing looked at her eyes, but she had a beautiful face and gentle manners, so she unknowingly lowered her tone, "I don't feel uncomfortable." Wan Yang warmed Yan Funing with her palms, "I want to thank Miss Yan Er for leaving the kiss, so that I can get you as my daughter-in-law." Fu Nanyao couldn't help but interrupt, "Sister-in-law, that woman is so bad. She withdrew from her brother's kiss and now she has driven us all out." Her eyebrows and eyes were lively, her appearance was cute, and her sister-in-law was shouting frivolously. Fu Beima nodded, "It's so bad, she just called me a fool. I actually—" Yan Funing didn't know how to answer the conversation, but they didn't know that the bride had changed the wrong way. "I thought it was her retreating kiss, but looking at the shiny eyes of the siblings in front of me, Yan Funing didn't have the courage to speak out at this moment." End of this chapter. After entering the wrong bridal chamber, I went to farm with the sinister and powerful official. Chapter 5, Sleep in a Room. Chapter 5, Sleeping in a Room. Wan Yang couldn't see it, so she reached out to touch Yan Funing's face. After touching it for a while, he praised with a smile, "Good appearance." Fu Nanyao smiled and nodded, "That's right, my sister-in-law is the best. This forehead is knocking severely enough." Wan Yang touched the bag on Yan Funing's forehead, "Does it still hurt?" Yan Funing was very puzzled. Why did Fu Si tell his mother and brother-in-law about the matter, but he didn't tell the story of changing the wrong bride last night? While thinking, the bag on her forehead was touched, she exhaled in a low voice, "Well, it hurts." His voice is soft and pity-filled, and he has a silk nose sound. It seemed as if he was carrying a hook, and he was frowning straight into Fu Si's ears. Fu Si sank his face, glanced at Yan Fu's pink face that was swaying Shuang Saishue, and left the car indifferently. Seeing his expression, Yan Funing thought to himself that it was terrible. Could it be that he would tell his mother and younger siblings that he had changed the wrong bride last night, and that she was the woman who had resigned from his kiss and then took revenge? The wheels were rumbling and the horse's hooves were pedaling. When he left the county town and passed by the town, the horse sneezes and squirts a long white breath. The car rushes all the way to the countryside. The road is getting narrower and more uneven. Yan Funing grabbed the wall of the car, lifted the curtain and looked out. There are many vehicles and pedestrians on the road, and they all look like they are preparing New Year's goods, but they are different. Yesterday's 260% of the marriage was on the 11th lunar month, and today's 27th lunar month. The Fu family and Yan family are really cruel and drive people away at the end of the year. When we arrived in the village, at the entrance of a small farmyard, the horse raised its hooves and made a long neigh, and the car finally stopped. The courtyard is at the foot of the mountain and is the most remote place in the entire village. Fu Beima helped his mother get out of the car and went to the main hall. Yan Funing helped Fu Nanyao out of the car. The car was at a certain distance from the ground. Fu Nanyao's lame leg could not bear the force, so she stood in the car and stopped. Yan Funing jumped out of the car and reached out to help Fu Nanyao again, but Fu Si didn't expect her to take her one step ahead and helped Fu Nanyao out of the car. Yan Funing retracted her hand awkwardly and raised her eyes to look around. Fu Nanyao stood in front of her and apologized, "Sister-in-law, I'm sorry, I'm inconvenient in my legs and feet. In the past, my brother took care of me." Fu Si, who had already walked around the car and was about to move his luggage, heard the reputation. When a certain woman quit his kiss, she grabbed her sister's leg and insulted her. If she had used the same trick again at this moment. Yan Funing smiled at Fu Nanyao, "Don't say that." Suddenly, he met Fu Si's cold eyes, especially the unconcealed disgust between his eyebrows, and Yan Funing's smile froze. Fu Si lowered his eyes indifferently, carried 2 bags of luggage into the room. At this time, the coachman said angrily, "Take all your luggage down quickly, I'll go back to the city soon. It's almost the Chinese New Year, it's so unlucky, let me catch this bus." Fu Nanyao said angrily, "Why do you speak like this? How did I say it? It's already good not to throw you halfway." The coachman picked up a big bag and threw it on the ground. Yan Funing quickly pulled it, "There are bedding and clothes here. If you throw it away, it will be dirty. It's a waste of trouble. As cold as it is today, washing is a troublesome for us." "What's my business? We didn't offend you, why are you?" Yan Funing's voice was soft, but it showed a sonorous voice. "The second young master is good at learning and will become a great man in the future. He can't even bring books out of the Fu family. Now that he has no books to read, what kind of greatness is he?" Having said that, the coachman did not throw his luggage any more, and his voice became much lower. Fu Si had no feelings about what Yan Funing said at this moment. The words of cursing him at the door of the book club are still in his ears. But Fu Nanyao said in surprise, "Sister-in-law also thinks that my brother is good at learning?" He immediately said helplessly, "That bad woman can only say that my brother is hard to study." Yan Funing was stunned. Did the supporting actress scold her like this? There is still a moment of memories. The beam is too deep. No more thoughts, she grabbed the big bag and took it away. However, the burden was too heavy, and she only took 2 steps and her whole body slanted straight away. Seeing this, Fu Nanyao took action. Fu Si left the house and saw it, and immediately spoke out, "Sister can't carry heavy objects." Yan Funing hurriedly said to Fu Nanyao, "Just come." After the words came, both hands held the big bag desperately, bit their lower lip, and walked into the room with difficulty. Fu Si and her walked towards her, looking straight ahead. A certain girl used to be domineering and coquettish, but now she deliberately lowered her voice, so delicate that she seemed to have suffered a great grievance. He didn't want to look at her, but his eyes inevitably fell on her. Subai's little hands clutched the bag tightly, and his fingertips turned white because of the force. It was these hands that tore up their wedding letter. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. Fu Si's hand behind him clenched unnaturally. Fu Nanyao moved 2 steps and said softly, "Brother, I took the initiative to carry it." Fu Si kept silent. Fu Nanyao said again, "I can't lift heavy objects because of my legs and feet. My sister-in-law is so cute that she can't lift them even if she grows up." Yan Funing entered the house and placed the big bag on the wooden bench against the wall. When she returned to the car to move her luggage, she was quite surprised and puzzled. She carried a big bag and someone took it away. It seems to be against her specifically. In desperation, she had to take a small bag. Soon after, the luggage was moved, the driver drove away. The family lives in the main hall. 15 years ago, CIE and I lived here for a while. Although I couldn't see it, I was still familiar with it. Wan Yangshu pointed to the Dongsho wing room. "I live with Nanyao, next to me. The little one was for Bei Mo to live in." Then, his finger moved to the west in an empty space. "I'll live in the house here for the young couple of CIE." Yan Funing looked around for a while and the yard was not big, so she surrounded it with a bamboo fence. The main hall faces north and south, and next to it is the stove. There are wing rooms on the east and west sides, each with 2 rooms, both of which are large and small. However, the fence is broken and scattered. The walls of the house are mostly peeling and mottled and damaged. Yan Fu stared at the west side room. She had no problem living in this small room on the west side, and it would be nice to stay. Fu Beima went over and pushed open the door of the small room on the west side. Looking from outside, there was a hole in the back roof. He couldn't stay as angry as today. "Mom, this room is too dilapidated. It's not suitable for your brother to live in, and it's not suitable for your sister-in-law to live in." Wan Young smiled and said, "This small one is a wood room, and your brother and sister-in-law will naturally live in that big one after another." Yan Funing was stunned on the spot. She had to sleep in a room with someone. Fu Beima nodded as if he was ignorant, and returned to help his mother walk to the big room east. He said as he walked, "I will live in the big room when I get married." Wan Yang smiled and said, "Okay." Fu Si did not say a word, and took the luggage of his mother and sister to their room. Fu Nanyao took some things he could hold and left the main hall. Only Yan Funing stood in the main hall without moving. Not long after, Fu Si returned, picked up the bag wrapped in the quilt and walked 2 steps. She felt that she was still standing there. Fu Si's eyes were dark and his voice was slightly cool. "Do you want to sleep in the hall?" End of this chapter. After entering the wrong bridal chamber, I went to farm with the sinister and powerful official. Chapter 6, 4 eyes are opposite. Chapter 6, 4 eyes are in opposition. No, no. Yan Funin took a small bag and moved his foot. Inside the bag was her clothes, and there was no luggage next to her. The two entered the house one after another. The house has not been occupied for a long time. Even though the steps are gentle, a lot of dust still rises, and the dust illuminated by the light also floats. Yan Funing wanted to ask him why she didn't tell her family that she was the one who quit him, but seeing so much dust in the house, she had to shut up and clean up. "I just moved to the countryside and although I didn't have much luggage, it took me a lot of time to organize it." At midday, Wan Yang blamed herself, "It's all my fault for not being useful. They came out of the Fu family and didn't bring rice and flour, so they were hungry. When I came out, I brought some steamed buns and ate them at noon." Fu Si took out a cloth bag and put it on the table. "In the afternoon, I will go to the mountains to pick up firewood. Take some wild game by the way." While speaking, he first gave his mother a steamed bun. Fu Beima moved quickly, and took one of his left and right hands and started to chew. Fu Nanyao took a steamed bun and put it on Yan Funing's hand. "Sister-in-law, eat it." Yan Funing, "Thank you. The weather is cold and the steamed buns have long been frozen and hard." Fu Beima only chewed a few bites and couldn't eat them anymore, so he shouted that he wanted to pick up firewood. Wan Yang said, "I just ate the morning food. It's okay to have a hungry meal, but it's just that my daughter-in-law has suffered." Although her daughter-in-law is not the daughter of the Yan family, she was spoiled since childhood and endured her hardships when she married her eldest son. Just thinking about it, she couldn't feel distressed. Yan Funing stuttered in small stutters, not knowing how to answer the conversation, but said, "I'm not hungry." It is said that the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law has been a difficult problem since ancient times, but her nominal mother-in-law is really good. She speaks gently and looks gentle. After a slight pause, Yan Funing said again, "I'll go and pick up firewood, too." She looked up at him because she was afraid that someone would not take care of her. Fu Si had never expected that she would meet his gaze like this. He stood, looking at her in a high and low manner. At this angle, he could easily capture her expression in his eyes. Her eyelashes were thick and slender, and her watery eyes stared at him without blinking, as if she was praying for love with someone. Innocence is with cunning. Just say that this woman has a purpose in everything she does, but now she has nowhere to go and is starting to pretend to be pitiful in front of him. But what surprised him was that her eyes were clear and clean. "Just let their brothers go." Wan Yang's words made the two who were facing each other with 4 eyes retract their eyes and chew cold steamed buns. Yan Funing lowered her eyes and said, "You can pick up more people if you have more people. If it is cold today, the firewood will burn quickly." Wan Yang then agreed to her go. Before leaving, Fu Si took a few strips of cloth and tied them together, preparing to tie firewood. Yan Funing took out a basket from the woodshed and carried it on her back. The two called Fu Beima and walked into the mountains. It was cold and there was almost no big firewood to pick up on the hills near the village. The 3 of them had to go deep into the mountains. Fu Si is tall and long, walking in front of him, speechless all the way. Fu Beima followed Yan Funin, kicking the dry branches on the ground while walking, and kept saying, "Have your sister-in-law ever seen an ants fighting?" Yan Funing shook her head, "No. It's so good to fight an ants. Next time I'll take my sister-in-law to watch it." "Good." Fu Beima said happily, "Brothers and sisters never agree to accompany me, it's better for sisters-in-law." Fu Si, who was walking in front of him, paused in slightest steps. "What a woman is good. Just appearance. He wants to see when she can act. There are mostly wild animals in the mountains, and people are rarely visited. There was a lot of firewood on the ground, and in a short while the three of them picked up a lot. They piled firewood together and tied it into bundles. After the firewood was tied into 4 piles, Fu Si said coldly, "Wait for me here, I will go back." Fu Beima, oh. Yan Funing, okay. When Fu Si's figure disappeared from sight, Yan Funing walked to the other side. Fu Beima followed her and thought she was going to pick up firewood, so he said, "My sister-in-law's backpack is too small to hold the firewood." Yan Funing patted the dust on her hands. "The basket is not here to hold firewood." "What's that for?" Fu Beima chased after him. "Picking mushrooms." Yan Funing stopped and looked around, "Find out if there are any dead trees nearby, if you have good luck." Before she could finish her words, she saw a dead tree lying with wild oyster mushrooms. Yan Funing ran away quickly, picked it one by one and put it in the basket behind her. Fu Beima learned from her appearance, picked it carefully, and put it in her backpack. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. Soon the backpack was filled. Fu Beima muttered, "I can't hold it anymore." "It doesn't matter. Keep a little bit, let's pick it next time." When the two of them returned to the wood pile, Fu Si had not come back yet. Yan Fu took off the basket on her back and pinched her shoulders. "This body is so cute, but the shoulders are sore after carrying such a basket of oyster mushrooms." Fu Beima took the dead branches, squatted on the ground and pulled them, and suddenly shouted, "Sister-in-law, come and see, there are ants." Yan Funing moved her arms, walked to him, caged her skirt, and squatted down. There are indeed a few ants on the ground. They didn't fight. Fu Beima said seriously, "Yes, they like to fight in groups." Yan Funing said in surprise, "Your observation is very powerful. Ants live in group life. Ants from different ethnic groups often conflict, causing fierce fighting, just like the 2 armies charging into battle. It is indeed amazing that the innocent boy in front of him can observe this." The first time he was praised by someone, Fu Beima showed a bit of a teenage appearance, and he scratched his head and smiled shyly. Others will only call him a fool, but only his sister-in-law will be different, so they will praise him. When Fu Si came back, he saw the 2 of them squatting, lowering their heads to look at the ground. Hearing the footsteps, the 2 of them looked up together on the ground. Yan Funing saw someone holding a pheasant in his hand, and his body was clean and refreshing, without any embarrassment left by catching the pheasant. Isn't this person a weak scholar? Will he catch pheasants? Then he thought, in the book, he tied her up and pressed her blade against her face. Such characters were probably not weak. Fu Beima happily waved to his brother, "Brother, come and see the ant." Fu Si said to himself, "Down is about to set, let's go down the mountain." Fu Beima stuck out his tongue and used the opportunity to make a face at him while his brother turned around. The funny and innocent appearance made Yan Funny giggle. Fu Si turned around and his eyes sank slightly. Yan Fu stopped smiling and carried the basket on her back, while Fu Beima went to pick up the firewood honestly. Fu Si tied the pheasant to the firewood, picked up 2 heavy bundles of firewood, and took the lead in walking down the mountain. When they were about to get home, they saw that the yard was full of people. A woman shouted, "Everyone judges, are you the ones who occupy other people's yards?" Fu Nanyao's face turned red with anger. "What does dominate the world? This is our yard." The woman put her hands on her hips and raised her voice and said loudly, "This is my yard. My parents are planning to use this yard to find me a son-in-law. Everyone in the village knows. There are also wild oyster mushrooms in winter. Popular science, according to the climate, oyster mushrooms can grow in autumn, winter, and spring. The seeds that are sown in late October every year can be harvested in about 2 months, and they just enter the rich production during the spring festival. It takes more than 2 months for the sowing in late November every year, and mushrooms can be produced in nearly 3 months. This article is about wild oyster mushrooms. Some cute little ones may ask, could it be that they were still planted in ancient times? Answer, It was artificially planted in the Sui dynasty and the Tang dynasty. There are also documents in the Western Jin dynasty and Northern Wei dynasty. Please believe in the wisdom of our ancestors. End of this chapter. After entering the wrong bridal chamber, I went to farm with the sinister and powerful official. Chapter 7, Sleep with me. Chapter 7, Sleeping with me. The villagers agreed. Wan Yang was in the room, and because she couldn't see her eyes, she could only grope and walk towards the door. The villagers should still recognize me. Now we are moving back. Please take care of me in the future. When Fu Nanyao heard her mother's voice, she quickly turned around to help her. The villagers then saw Fu Wanyang. More than 10 years have passed, and the blind daughter of the Fu family's big house has not changed much. An aunt said, "So it's Wanyang. Haven't you moved to the county town?" An uncle said, "Someone saw a carriage entering the village in the morning. It turned out to be you." Wanyang smiled and said, "It's us. I'll let the children come to the place where their grandparents worked hard to see and live." The aunt nodded repeatedly and praised, "Good daughter." Fu Beima didn't like so many people in his yard, and he took a few steps with his chaiha and shouted, "Who are you? Get out of my house." The villagers frowned when they heard the sound. They lived in the same village in the future. No one who had just moved in and said that they were just talking. It can be seen that this half-baby is stupid. Fu Beima especially disliked the woman who was just mumbling, so he pulled out a piece of firewood and grinned and showed her fiercely. Seeing that something was wrong with the limelight, Fu Aging turned around and left. As soon as he was discharged from the hospital, he was amazed by the young man walking towards him. In the surrounding villages, even if she went to the town, she had never seen a man who looked better than before. That's how her husband came to her. As for this yard, she had to go home to discuss with her parents and grandparents. After watching the fun, the villagers also left the yard one after another. Fu Wanyang is a blind man. You guys can see it too. Her daughter's legs are lame, and the boy who picks firewood seems to be stupid. TSK 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 TSK, this family. Didn't you see it? The tall and handsome girl who came in, and who was tall and handsome, and followed behind him, had a tender face that could pinch out water. What's the trick of moving to the countryside when you say you can't live in the county town? Then I have to ask the Hu family, isn't Hu Aging's grandma the real girl of Fuda and Fu Air? The old couple of Fu has been away for a few years. Now the Fu family in the county is decided by the old couple of Fu. The villagers' discussions were all heard by Fu Si. He turned cold, moved the firewood into the firewood, and took the pheasant to the stove. Yan Funing put down her backpack in the stove, saw someone coming in, and asked, "Would you like me to help me with anything?" Fu Si didn't look at her, and his voice was indifferent, "No need." After saying that, he left the pheasant with his feet tied up, carried the bucket and left the stove. Soon, Wan Yang came to the kitchen with her twins. Facing them, Yan Funing was not as reserved as before Fu Si. It's not that she wants to be restrained, but that someone's eyes, eyebrows, and all over his body are full of coldness. It's not his fault for this. It was the female supporting role who broke the engagement first, which made him lose face. Now facing her, naturally she has no good face. After the four of them chatted in the kitchen for a few words, Fu Si came back with 2 buckets of water. Fu Beima wanted to help his brother pour water into the water tank, but was stopped by his brother. The water tank needs to be washed. Fu Si said, and took a kitchen knife to start dealing with the pheasant. The movements of wiping the chicken's neck were clean and neat, which made Yan Funing couldn't help swallowing. His eyes moved to the bucket. The 2 buckets were quite large, and there was a lot of distance from the river to the yard. He breathed smoothly along the way. Coupled with his movements of wiping the chicken's neck, she couldn't help but reminded her of the dream he used a dagger to slash her face. This person is not a simple scholar, and her delicate body cannot afford to offend her. Yan Funing stopped looking at him, scooped water from the bucket and washed 2 handfuls of wild oyster mushrooms. Fu Nanya was not idle either, so she walked to the back of the stove to burn the fire. When Fu Beima saw a bucket of empty space, he volunteered and said, "Mom, I'll go get water and wash the water tank." Be careful when you go to the river. Wan Yang told him that she agreed to let him go. Fu Beima agreed, picked up the bucket and ran away. On this side, Fu Si felt it was troublesome to get rid of the hair, so he peeled the skin directly. This method quickly dealt with the pheasant and threw it into the pot. I'll eat chicken and drink soup tonight. I'll go and see if there are any hares or something. Fu Nanyao smiled and said, okay, hares have a lot of meat. Yan Funing opened the lid of the pot, put oyster mushrooms in, and flipped it with a spoon, take the fresh. Wan Yang nodded, okay, we don't even have seasonings now. It's good to add oyster mushrooms to improve freshness. As she said that, she sighed, life like this is not a solution, how can people not eat? But now they don't even have rice or flour. If I were not too hungry at noon, it was because I had eaten food. It was dark now and I was so hungry that my chest was pressed against my back. Yan Funing said, I will take the remaining oyster mushrooms to the town tomorrow morning to see if I can get some rice and flour back. Wan Yang was delighted, my daughter-in-law is a good person to live. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. Soon, Fu Beima came back from fetching water and started washing the water tank as soon as he arrived at the stove. Listening to the sound of the 4 children in the kitchen being busy, Wan Yang smiled with relief. The pheasant is relatively firewood and has been cooked for a long time. When the meat is soft and it is completely dark. Because I was so hungry, even though the oyster mushroom chicken soup was not filled with seasonings, the whole family still ate it fragrantly. The leftover steamed buns at noon instantly improved several times. With the sound of firecrackers coming from time to time outside, the meal was quite warm. Late at night, the whole family washed up briefly and went back to their rooms. When Yan Funing returned to the room, Fu Si was making the bed. Thank you for taking me in, she spoke in a stutter. It seemed as if she thought her statement was wrong, and Fu Si glanced at her, half-touched her eyelids, but she didn't correct it. Yan Funing said again, it was me who quit your dear. You didn't tell me about the bride's mistake. Thank you for this. After a slight pause, she added, I'm not going to let you say. If he wanted to say it, she couldn't stop it. And she herself wanted to say that she just felt she had to find a suitable opportunity. With her current goal, she has to make money. Thinking of him becoming a ruthless powerful minister, it will be at least nearly 2 years. In the past 2 years, she has tried her best to follow his hair and make more money. When she has money, she will compensate him for his mental losses, and she can live a good life in this world herself. Well, the best of both worlds. Fu Si didn't know what she was thinking, and just said, my mother and the others are kind, I don't say it, I just don't want them to be sad. Oh. He changed his tone, there is only one bed, you sleep on the ground. Yan Funing, ah. Just like the cold ground is cold today, a man who is embarrassed to ask her to sleep on the ground. Fu Si did not respond and sat directly on the edge of the bed. Yan Funing walked up to him and asked in a low voice, I'm afraid of the cold, can I sleep in the bed? You mean to have a bed with me? Fu Si raised his eyes, looked at it, a few wisps in his eyes, and soon there was no slight turbulence. Yan Funing was stunned, as if it was not appropriate to let him sleep on the ground, after all, this was his home. Thinking of this, she nodded, well, I have a good sleeping position. I promise not to touch you, okay? She gave her the courage to be brave, and she didn't dare to touch him. End of this chapter. After entering the wrong bridal chamber, I went to farm with the sinister and powerful official. Chapter 8, Honest Tea and Call Mother. Chapter 8, Honest Tea and Call Mother. In fact, she didn't want to sleep with him either, the problem was that she didn't want to sleep on the ground. The ground is tamped with soil, wet and cold. Who can stand it if you don't have a mattress on the sleeping ground? If you sleep in a quilt, not only will the quilt be dirty, but it will be too narrow to cover it. Fortunately, there were 2 quilts on the bed, and compared to the comparison, she and him quilted on the ground, which was not unacceptable. Seeing that he didn't respond, and was afraid that he would force her to sleep on the ground, Yan Funing hardened her teeth and picked up a sheet of bed. Is it okay to use the sheet in the middle of the bed to separate it like this and not violate each other? Fu Si's expression was slightly condensed. Non-aggression. He said during the day that he would become a great man. This woman can't read big words, and she says. It seems a little ink. It is probably because the Yen family is rich, and the Yen family is accustomed to being elegant on weekdays. Yen Funing took a rope, tied it tightly at the center of both ends of the bed frame, and hung up the bed sheet. The bed sheets hang down, and they are tied with thin ropes to the end of the bed. It's quite strong. She pinched the bed sheet and shook it slightly. What do you think? His eyes were like water, and he stared at him without blinking. Fu Si lowered his eyes indifferently and lay down and fell asleep. Yen Funing was stunned for a moment, then walked around to the other side of the bed and got on the bed. She undressed with her hands and feet. The wind is howling outside the window. Fu Si frowned. He didn't like someone else on the bed. However, the 2-year deadline was determined by him, so he will bear it for the time being. Now that the family lacks food and no money, this life is quite fresh for her spoiled person. Staying there for a long time will be a great torture for her. He wanted to see what she would do in a few days. The next day, the morning light gradually faded, and the roosters crowed one after another. Yen Funing stretched out when she heard the sound, and her arm hit the hanging sheet, alerting her. Seeing that there was no one's clothes at the end of the bed, I thought he had gotten up. After breathing a sigh of relief, she quickly got out of bed. She is living under someone's roof, but she is not allowed to stay in bed. Today she has to go to the town to sell wild oyster mushrooms. The earlier the time, the better. When she arrived at the stove, Fu Si had already filled the water tank. I was so hungry last night that I ate all the steamed buns and chicken, and there was still a lot of chicken soup left. Yen Funing washed 2 handfuls of oyster mushrooms and tore them into pieces, cooked them with chicken soup, and ate them today. After using up the food, Wan Yang took Yen Funing's hand and touched her face with a smile. Yen Funing didn't understand why. Fu Nanyao smiled and said, "Sister-in-law, I'm asking you to offer tea." Fu Si said indifferently, "Mom, there is no tea at home, so you can avoid it if you offer tea. How do you, a child, speak? I'm waiting for my daughter-in-law to call me mother." Wan Yang looked at her eldest son, her eyes not focused on the void. Yen Funing knew that someone did not treat her as his wife, and instead of him, she did not treat him as her husband. But they are nominally husband and wife, and no matter what the future holds, it is appropriate to offer tea. Yen Funing used warm boiled water instead of tea, toasted the tea, and called her mother. Wan Yang was happy to hear this and put a jade bracelet on Yen Funing's wrist. "I can't ask for it." Yen Funing wanted to take off the jade bracelet, but Wan Yang held it down. "I'm wearing this bracelet with peace of mind." "Thank you." When the female supporting actress retired from the marriage, she said many inappropriate words, and Yen Funing felt ashamed at this moment. "You kid and mom are polite." Wan Yang smiled and said to the twins, "Nan Yao Bei Mo, you go out first, I have something to say to your brother and sister-in-law." The siblings said yes, leave the main hall. Wan Yang held her son and daughter-in-law's hand from left to right, and asked quietly, "You are already a couple. Can you get a family after 2 nights?" She was blind and could not see even if there was Yuanpa. Nan Yao is waiting for her to be in the boudoir again, so she can't ask her, so she can only be a mother. Yen Funing was petrified on the spot. Fu Si was silent for a moment, and said with no expression on his face, "Mom, my son is focused on the imperial examination and has no other intentions." Wan Yang wanted to persuade her, but Yen Funing hurriedly said, "Mom, it's getting late, so the oyster mushrooms must be sold as soon as possible." "Yes, yes." Wan Yang said repeatedly, "See, go with you." "No, I'll do it alone." Yen Funing refused politely. If she could, she would rather stay away from someone. No mistakes, 1 song, 1 content, 1 in 6, 1 book, 1 bar, 1 reading. Although she doesn't know the way to the town, she can ask people. Wan Yang was worried that her girl's family would go alone, so she sternly asked her eldest son to say goodbye. Yen Funing went back to her room and changed into a clean set of clothes, and then returned to the stove to carry a basket. As soon as he stepped out of the kitchen door, he saw someone changing into a simple robe and waiting for her at the gate of the yard. The two of them spoke to their families and went out one after another. Fu Beimo waved, "Sister-in-law is back soon." Yan Funyun turned around and replied with a smile. Fu Nanyao couldn't help asking, "Why don't you call me brother to come back soon? My sister-in-law accompanied me to watch the ants yesterday." Fu Beimo's eyes kept following his brother and sister-in-law's back and murmured, "Brother is not a man, so he doesn't help his sister-in-law carry the bag." Wan Yang laughed when she heard this. "Beimo has grown up." Fu Beimo said dissatisfiedly, "My sister-in-law shouted in the car yesterday, but my brother didn't help her." Wan Yang smiled even more. A quarter of an hour later, Yan Funing followed Fu Si out of the village. On the way to the town, there were many ox, donkey carts passing by. Some people driving the car shouted at them, "Hey, are you taking the car? Each person will go to the town for 5 cents. Fu Si didn't say a word and walked around. Yan Funing waved her hand, "No need." They didn't have a single copper plate, and the ox, donkey cart was slow, and the boards were crowded with people. The driver waved his whip, "It's okay if you don't sit, you'll be in business next time." A young woman in the car sneered, "Look at their clothes, they are not even able to sit on the ox cart." The man sitting next to her took out a few copper plates and gave them to the driver. "This is the car money for our couple's return trip. The 2 more copper plates will determine the 2 seats in front." This move caused everyone in the car to praise her, saying that she had married the right person. The young woman smiled shyly, and saw the handsome couple walking on the roadside, but the man walked forward and ignored the girl carrying a basket behind her. By this comparison, the young woman felt more and more that her husband was good, and her body became closer to her husband. Although the ox cart is slow, it is still faster than the speed of people walking. When the car left, Yan Funing took a few steps quickly, trying to keep up with Fu Si. Fu Si didn't want to get too close to her, so he noticed that she speeded up, so he also speeded up. Yan Funing frowned. She raised her speed, but still couldn't catch up with him, so she trotted a few steps. "Can you wait for me?" The tone is soft and contains a bit of unconscious beauty. Fu Si's face was not fluctuating, and his pace slowed down a lot. Yan Funing finally followed his footsteps. She felt that her stature was taller among women, and this person was 1 head taller than her, and she felt an inexplicable sense of oppression when walking beside him. "I can go alone, you can go back." He didn't like her, and she wanted to live a better life in the future, so there was no need to be annoying at this moment. End of this chapter. After entering the wrong bridal chamber, I went to farm with the sinister and powerful official. Chapter 9, Help Others. Chapter 9, Helping. Fu Si glanced beside her. She had fair skin and delicate side face. Soon, he looked away quietly and said indifferently, "Mother's meaning." "Oh." Yan Funing responded, recording the road while walking, and next time she could go to the town alone. The two of them said nothing more. After another half an hour, I finally arrived in the town. The streets in the town are paved with bluestone slabs, with light eaves on both sides, with shops and endless streams of pedestrians and vendors. Fu Si's eyes patrolled the streets, saw a bookstore, and turned his head and said, "In 2/4 of an hour, we will meet here." "Okay." Yan Funin nodded. Seeing him step away, her eyes moved to the street, and many people squatted on the ground, with different vegetables in front of them. Setting up a stall like this is a way, but she quickly discovered the problem. People who come and go usually only ask, and few buy it. If she was like them, it would be difficult for her to sell all the oyster mushrooms in her backpack within 2/4 of an hour, or to ask in an inn or a tavern. After making up her mind, she walked towards a restaurant ahead. Halfway through, a little girl's cry caught her attention. She looked in the sound and saw a man in his 20s hugging the little girl at the entrance of the clinic, choking in his voice, "My daughter is crying like this, can she be good? Let's help me see it first." The person in the clinic replied to him at the top of his voice, "Look at your appearance, it's a question whether you can take out a hang of money. What if you can't afford it?" While comforting his daughter, the man asked someone to ask, "Please help my daughter with her arm. I will definitely make up for the medical treatment when I look back." At this time, the doctor in the library slowly stepped out. If your daughter doesn't look at her arm, she will be useless. If she has money, go back and get it first. When the man heard this, he almost cried, if you don't look at it, it will be useless. Please help me see it as soon as possible. Just as he was about to kneel down and kowtow to ask for help, Yen Fu bent down slightly and held the girl's arm. With just one touch, she knew that the little girl was just dislocated. Then he held the little girl's wrist with one hand, held her elbow with the other, pressed her thumb against the head of the radial bone, and stretched and bent her skillfully, and a slight bounce sounded. The doctor in the library glanced at Yen Funing and said to the man, your daughter's arm is touched by an irrelevant person, and it is even more difficult to treat again. The man said in a bad mood, this girl, my daughter's arm. Yen Funing touched the girl's face and asked in a warm voice, you raise your arms and see, does it still hurt? The little girl blinked her tears, raised her little arm, and suddenly laughed out loud, it doesn't hurt anymore. The man asked happily, doesn't it hurt? The little girl shook her head and said in a silence, Dad, it doesn't hurt anymore. The man pinched his daughter's elbow in disbelief and confirmed that it was really no longer hurt. He remembered to thank the girl who was carrying a basket on her back. The father and daughter looked around, where was the figure of that girl? At this moment, Yen Funing had already entered a restaurant. Boss, this is a wild oyster mushroom picked in the mountains. Can you change it to a good price? She put down the basket and took a oyster mushroom for the shopkeeper to see. The shopkeeper took it and pinched it, nodded and praised, no, fresh, tender. He immediately compared the number, because this is wild, I'll give you 25 cents a pound. Yen Funing didn't know what the level of 25 articles was. She recalled the money-spending part of the book, and there were very few descriptions of prices, so she had to ask, how much does a pound of rice now? The shopkeeper looked at her and saw that she didn't look like a poor person. He thought, maybe it was a daughter who could give up in her husband's house in the future and experience life. So he frankly quoted a price, 10 cents per pound. Then do you want all my wild oyster mushrooms? The shopkeeper nodded, it's indeed wild, I want it all. Yen Funing discussed with him, I picked these oyster mushrooms by myself. For the sake of this hard work, can they be counted as 30 cents per pound? How could such a bargaining? It can be seen that the girl in front of me was indeed from a wealthy family and had no idea about money. The oyster mushrooms in the back basket were probably picked by her family. The shopkeeper smiled and shook his head, it's a shortage of 5 cents, girl. He raised his hand and tried to weigh the waiter. Removed the basket, and the net weight of oyster mushrooms was 700 pounds and 80 pounds. Yen Funing discussed again, that's 8 kilograms, it's easier to calculate, a total of 200 cents. Miss can settle the score, the shopkeeper smiled, it's up to you, you can calculate 8 Jean. I remember to bring my family to my shop for dinner next time. The shopkeeper asked the waiter to collect oyster mushrooms and counted 200 cents to Yen Funing. Seeing that she had no money, she gave her a red rope. Yen Funing thanked her, put the copper plates one by one with a red rope and put them into her sleeves. The cuff became heavy in an instant. She carried a basket on her back and took her to the grain and oil shop across the street with her cuff. I bought rice and flour in the grain and oil store, and bought some seasonings. I almost used up 200 pennies, leaving only 10 cents. No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. As expected, the agreed time had arrived, Yen Funing walked quickly to the street. At this time, the basket contained 12 kilograms of rice, 5 kilograms of flour, and seasonings, which made her shoulders so painful. The female supporting role had never carried such a heavy object with her delicate body. After walking only a few steps, she was panting. Fu Si had been waiting for a while, and when she saw her coming, her breath was very unstable, so she looked into her backpack quietly. The items in the backpack are packed in cloth bags, like rice and flour. This woman really sold oyster mushrooms. He coughed lightly, do you want to take a bus? At this moment, the car driver I met just now shouted at them, young couple, take the car, it costs 10 cents for 2. The pain on Yen Funin's shoulder made her ignore the names of her and someone else. Besides, they are indeed husband and wife now. She quietly pinched the only 10 copper plates left in her sleeve, and she could buy a pound of rice for this 10 cents. The driver patted the 2 empty seats beside him. The young couple had already saved money when they came. Do they have to save money when they returned? Life is not so cheap. Yan Funing couldn't carry the backpack filled with rice flour. She pursed her lips and was about to speak when she heard a refreshing sound. When we came, we paid the copper coins in advance. My husband gave you 2 more copper coins. How could you give us our seat to others? The driver smiled and said, you haven't come yet, so I want to rush back first and bring you with me next time. The young woman snorted, turned to Yan Funing, stretched out her 5 fingers and flipped it a few times. 15 cents, you give us 15 cents, and these 2 seats will be given to you. Yan Funing said, we won't sit in the seat you have reserved. The young woman sneered, can't you take out the 15 cents? Fu Si stood beside Yan Funing and asked indifferently, do you want to sit? No. Yan Funing pinched the copper coins in her sleeve again, but she really couldn't afford 15 cents. If you can walk back naturally. Without wanting to look at the young woman's face, Yan Funing walked away. Suddenly, she lightened her back and looked around, and saw someone carrying the handle on the backpack. I'll carry it, he said. End of this chapter. After entering the wrong bridal chamber, I went to farm with the sinister and powerful official. Chapter 10, Let Her Be the Head. Chapter 10, Let Her Be the Head. Without waiting for her to react, Fu Si took off the basket from her back and carried it on her body. As usual when he came, he quickly walked ahead. Yan Funing chased after him and wanted to say thank you, but she couldn't speak. Someone wants to eat rice and flour in the basket, so he can carry it back, which is also worth it. Fu Si glanced at her at the end of her eyes, and his handsome eyebrows frowned slightly. With just such a basket of things, she could breathe, and she kept pressing and rubbing her shoulders all the way. Sweet. The boredom in the corners of the eyebrows and eyes surged unconcealed. When the 2 walked home, it was almost noon. Mom, we're back. As soon as he walked into the yard, Yan Funing shouted sweetly. Wan Yang, who was in the main hall, heard it and waved to the direction of the sound with a smile. Children, it's cold outside. Fu Si quickly walked into the house and placed the basket aside. Wan Yang groped over and touched her eldest son's arm. She slapped it away. When she grabbed Yan Funing's arm, she smiled and asked, are you tired? Fu Si. I'm not tired, yes. Yan Funing pursed her lips slightly and finally said, it was my husband who carried the rice noodles back, I'm not tired. Fu Si's eyebrows were slightly closed, and a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. Wan Yang pulled Yan Funing to sit down and said softly, how can you not be tired? It takes a long way to go to the town here. Yan Funing smiled slightly, took the water poured by Fu Nanyao, and took a sip. The oyster mushrooms are nearly 8 kilograms. According to the weight of 8 kilograms, they sold them for a total of 200 cents. After another sip of water, she said, then, I went to the grain and oil store to buy rice and flour, and at the same time I bought salt and sugar. There is rapeseed oil and soy sauce in it. If you want to buy it, you can bring a utensil to pack it, you won't buy it. Wan Yang praised, my daughter-in-law is so capable. Fu Beima opened the rice bag, then the noodles bag, and said happily, we won't go hungry. Yan Funing said, yes, 12 kilograms of rice and 5 kilograms of flour, it should be enough for a few days for us to eat. She took out the last few copper plates from her sleeve and smiled embarrassedly, I bought these, and only 10 left, it's been a money. Wan Yang gently patted Yan Funing's back of her hand, child, thank you for your hard work. At this time, Fu Si took out a handful of copper coins and placed them on the table. 2 copper plates fell to the ground and rolled away. Brother, why do you have copper coins? Fu Beima picked it up quickly with his eyes and hands. Fu Si said lightly, I earned writing, please put it away. Only then did Yan Funing find that there were black ink marks on his fingers. Fu Nanya took the 2 copper plates picked up by his younger brother and piled them together with those on the table. After a moment, she smiled and said, "A total of 68 cents are spent on my brother and sister-in-law." Wan Yang said, "The money is collected by my daughter-in-law. We will be the leader of our family in the future." Yan Funing was puzzled. "I am the leader." Wan Yang nodded, "Well, I believe me." Yan Fu stared at someone. After all, he earned 58 articles here, but it was hard to ask him at this moment, so she used a red rope to put up the copper plates one by one. Wan Yang said happily, "It's almost noon, let's make noodles." Although she couldn't see it, she was still good at rolling noodles with noodles. Fu Beima carried the basket, Fu Nanyao supported Wan Yang, and the mother and son went to the kitchen. Yan Funing was wearing copper coins, and seeing that someone was still there, she asked softly, "Do you want to put away your copper coins yourself?" Fu Si poured a glass of water and drank it. At this moment, he heard what she asked and drank water. "You're told to take care of it, you're going to take care of it." The voice was slightly cool. "It's not a big deal if there are only a few copper coins left and right." In the stove, as soon as the flour was put into the basin, a lot of noises came from the yard. Hu Ajing came again with a few villagers. "When my uncle and grandma entered the city, I asked my grandma to look at this courtyard." Hu Ajing said with confidence, "Now my uncle and grandma are not alive, so this courtyard belongs to me, my grandma is already there." Fu Nanyao patted the flour on his hands, left the stove, and asked, "Why are you here again?" Hu Ajing had a twitch on her neck, "I'm from a yard, do you want your consent?" Yan Funing put away the copper coins and left the main hall. Her beautiful eyes stared at the dark-skinned woman not far away. "Who are you?" "No mistakes, one song, one content, 1 in 6, one book, one bar, one reading. My name is Hu Ajing. Fu Da is my uncle and my are Fu Da's biological sister. What you said just now is a fallacy. Why is it wrong?" Yan Funing said lightly, "Grandmasters are gone. When their daughters and grandchildren come back, can't they live in this yard? Piancheng asked you to take it away with a relative in another surname. Isn't this a fallacy?" Hu Ajing never expected that the overly beautiful girl opposite would make her excited as soon as she said it. In the stove, Wan Yang asked her youngest son to help her return to the room, and the issue of ownership of this courtyard must be broken. "What is a fallacy?" "My grandparents said that Fu Wanyang is not the biological daughter of my uncle and uncle at all." Hu Ajing pointed to Fu Wanyang passing by, and then turned to the middle-aged man standing beside her, "Li Zheng, you can comment quickly." Li Zheng pondered for a moment and said, "Fu Da's house inherits its children for reasons." "That's right. If there are no children, then it will be inherited by relatives." Fu Nanyao was anxious and looked at Fu Si, who was still drinking water in the main hall. "Brother." Fu Si put down the bamboo teacup, and as soon as he walked out of the main hall, he could hear a clear voice. "Dare you ask if the law stipulates that children adopted by the law also enjoy the right to inherit?" Yan Fu stared at Li Zheng, who was taking care of them and her grandparents and enjoying family happiness in their later years. What did the Hu family do during this period? Her eyes turned to Hu Ajing's face. He jumped out at this moment. Even this dilapidated old house has to occupy. What kind of law is this? Fu Si's lips moved slightly, and this woman actually understood the laws of the current dynasty. A choke in the throat of the limb, this. Even Li Zheng was blocked, and Hu Ajing jumped in an anxious manner. The one who adopts is an outsider, how can outsiders inherit it? At this time, Wan Yang took out the deed and showed it to everyone. "Before my parents went, they changed the name on the deed to mine. Nianfu family, Hu family is a relative. She gave Miss Hu face last time. I don't want to come here again today. Please say justice in the village." "Talk." Li Zheng said, "Since the deed has been changed to the owner, it cannot be regarded as an inheritance." "Hu Ajing, why are you fighting for? People even have a house deed," so Hu Ajing had nothing to say. After this incident, the village was leaving awkwardly with the villagers. Hu Ajing saw that the young man standing at the door of the main room was extremely handsome, and he smiled at Fu Wanyang with a gun. "Uncle, our two families are relatives after all. I am wrong today, don't be angry." Wan Yang refused to answer. Hu Ajing turned to smile at Fu Si, suppressed her voice, making the voice sound as nice as possible. Is this second cousin? Is the second cousin a marriage? Go away quickly, our family doesn't welcome you. Fu Nanyao frowned. Also, my brother is already married. Wanyang stretched out her hand in the general direction where Yan Funing stood. Daughter-in-law, help her back to the kitchen, I will roll out noodles for you. End of this chapter.